Is anyone using this? I'm just gonna.
So much larger now?
After finishing the emotionally traumatic episodes that were in season 1 of The Last of Us, it only got me more excited for the insurmountable possibilities they can take this story in season 2. The optimistic part of me wants to hope there's less nine irons, but I think we all know better. Honestly, God bless the actress they cast for Abby. You are strong, because the internet is crazy, and I expect a lot of hate coming your way, especially in the beginning of the season after you get a hole-in-one with Zaddy Pedro's head. But hopefully that changes later in the season when we see Abby's story unfold and realize that her and Ellie aren't that different. But this video is about my predictions and expectations for what they could change or add in season 2. Now I could go into some casting options like for Dina or Jesse or that's all. That's all. But I want to get into some of the meatier topics of things they can change or add to, like Bill and Frank's story in season 1, or explaining Joel's scar in his head, or Ellie's immunity. Now thankfully it was already confirmed that part 2 is going to be split into multiple seasons, but there are multiple ways we can see that played out. In the first version, we can follow very close to the game, where we see the beginning of the story, follow Ellie in Seattle for her first 3 days, and then at the end, we cut to Abby, and then season 3 is going to be about Abby's journey, and then Ellie in Santa Barbara. Also, if you haven't played the game, I'm definitely going to spoil a lot of stuff, so
play the game already.
But honestly, I don't personally think that's the best course of action. I think there has to be a way they can intertwine the stories for both seasons to show the whole story, but cut between Ellie and Abby, so it's not just a whole third season of Abby, because by that point, you still don't sympathize with the character, and no one's going to want to watch just Abby and not Bella Ramsey being a badass. But whatever way they want to go around that, I have a lot of faith in Craig and Neil to make the best story possible. The next big change we're going to see, which I might be wrong about because Joel's death is the inciting incident, and Neil Druckmann always says he prefers getting right into the inciting incident, then you can kind of start the story off of that back and really lead with fire. However, I think we're still going to get a lot of time in Jackson, either with a backstory or explaining how they all met, or even how they acclimated to living in the community full time. And hopefully, Joel teaching Ellie guitar, because that is just gonna make me cry like a little baby. So I'm hopeful that splitting the game into 2 seasons is gonna give enough time for these backstories to be told effectively and not being rushed through. Because I think one of the most interesting parts about watching season 1 was all the little things they added. Like, you never really spent time in Jackson. So actually being in the community, seeing they have a movie theater set up, seeing all the lights and the Christmas trees, and how they build relationships is really important to this second story. Now, another change, something I'm just more hopeful for, is more infected, because we didn't really see that many infected in season 1 outside of 2 or 3 episodes, and we only saw one real episode where they're fighting the infected. So I'm hoping we get more fights with clickers, bloaters, and hopefully shamblers. And with all this added time, I hope they include some more character traits and differences like they did with Sam and Henry. So hopefully Lev and Abby have a new layer to their relationship that can grow in depth that we can really understand and kind of get behind. Now, just as a side note, I think season 2 and 3 are going to be completely different than the adaptation we saw from the game to season 1. In part 2, it's much more of an open world, so it relies more heavily on gameplay than just cinematics or even small story beats while walking through a town with Ellie and Joel. So you have a whole exploration of Seattle your first day you get there with Ellie and Dina. I don't believe we're going to be able to see all that because there's so many mini stories within that first chapter of such a huge game that might not lead to be narratively powerful or important enough to show. Even with the large game they have to adapt into these seasons, I do feel we're going to get a lot more time to see them marinate in their feelings. And honestly, it's going to be such an emotionally traumatic season for Bella Ramsey, so gotta bless them. I could not do it. Another large shift we're going to see in the seasons is something we saw in the games, where Neil Druckmann actually quoted that the first game is about the extreme measures you'll go to for those you love, while part 2 is about how far you would go to bring justice to those you love. So first off, I definitely think we're going to see Abby actually infiltrate Jackson. And no, this is not as crazy as it sounds. Some of the original concept art and the original concept of the game was Abby sneaking her way into Jackson and kind of befriend Joel and Ellie and everyone there and gain their trust. So when she eventually leads Joel to the ambush with her friends, it's not as surprising instead of her just running into him by chance on the road while being chased by infected. Now this next one is a sad one, but it's almost a guarantee. Future Days, Joel's song that he sings for Ellie, that is basically the physical embodiment of her grief throughout the whole game, is probably going to be a different song, because that song came out in 2013 on their Outbreak year, and since this show's Outbreak year is 2003, it's going to have to be a different song. So if you guys have any ideas what song they might use, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to see your thought process about why and which song you guys think would be best. Now this next change has to do with flashbacks, which I think we're going to see in general more in Season 2, because we didn't really have that in the first game that much anyway. But these flashbacks are going to get a lot more emphasis in Season 2 and 3. But specifically, I think we're going to see more of Tommy's POV, not just in dealing with the trauma from losing Joel, but also just flashbacks of him and Joel going through the outbreak together through all those 20 years we skipped from the first game. This next change is based on flashbacks and it's probably going to span across both seasons, but I'm positive we're going to get the origin stories for the Scars and the WLF, the Wolves in Seattle, because even though they're both shoot first, ask questions second asshats, it might be interesting to see how they originated, how they separated, and how the communities were built after they took over Fedra. But in general, with the Scars, I think we're going to see two sides of them. We already see the dichotomy between Lev and the Scars, like good and evil, but I really think we're going to see a more stealthy, cloaked in shadow version that is going to be more scary, that they fight. Boogly, boogly, bitch! And then on the other hand, Ellie or Abby visit the Scar community of the island to see this thriving, quiet, small community that just really love each other, despite the crazy cult origins of it all. And a big change that I don't know if we're going to see, but it would be really interesting, is actually from the original concept for a level. We're in a flashback where we actually see Ellie and Joel go visit Joel's girlfriend, who lives about 2 hours outside of Jackson in a little community. But when they get there, her community is overrun by infected, so they go in, take out all the infected, and find out that she actually got bitten. And while Joel tells Ellie to run out and go to the river and get some water, she hears a gunshot, and she doesn't know if it was Joel killing Esther or Esther killing herself. So it reverberates and creates this new motivation for Ellie realizing she could have been the cure. And after all these years, it's building up because she knows Joel wasn't 100% honest with her what happened with the Fireflies back in the hospital. So we could see this really eat away at her, saying if there was a cure, this never would have happened. We wouldn't have to lose anyone else. And that could lead to her eventually going back to the hospital and finding those recordings that tell the truth of what actually happened that day. And the final, less of a prediction and more something I'm interested in seeing how they do, is portraying Ellie's PTSD. I wonder if they're going to have a more visual or just inferred representation, but regardless, I know Bella is going to kill it. But those are all my predictions for now. I'm positive once we start hearing more about Season 2 and Season 3 in production, I'm going to have a lot more. So if you guys want to see more videos about that, or you want me to explain the second game and see exactly how they can adapt each episode, please leave comments down below. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and as always, thanks for watching.